Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Cosmic Catastrophe exclusively on Rumble, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, Saturday. I'm your host, Diamond, from the Oppenheimer Ranch Project. Joining me is my lovely partner and co-host, Leah Shaper.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about 4 topics in the scientific news, including a 300,000-year-old wooden tool assemblage found, which is pretty mind-blowing because they're wooden tools. I mean, wood typically doesn't last 300,000 years. We'll get to that. Also, an ancient civilization that may date Sumer in that region. A group of tablets were found, so we'll show you those. The site is called the Gyroth site. We'll then get into some electric universe and talk about a recently captured Transient Luminous event from the space station. This is a giant galactic jet that occurred somewhere over Texas or maybe New Orleans. It's arguable where it actually happened, but from the space station, they did get a shot of that. So we'll show you that. And the reason we can show you that is because NASA does not copyright its photos, like many people who take photos of these and give you copyright strikes. We'll end up with an interesting paper coming out with ties between Earth's oxygen levels and the magnetic field strength. So very fascinating correlation being discovered there. But once again, correlation does not mean causation.
Correct.
So do you have anything you want to talk about before we jump in?
Nope.
All righty then.
Although I will mention that this wooden tool thing is totally new to me, so I'm excited.
All right. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
These are the tools in question, some of them. And the first thing that stuck out to me when I looked at this, I was like, oh, they look like harpoons because they're like notched.
Yeah.
Here's a smaller one. But because of this smaller one here, I think their conclusion is probably quite correct, that these are some of the first types of shovels, so to speak, but more just like digging rods.
Like a digging stick.
Yeah.
Yeah. But clearly it's sharpened on the end on purpose.
Yeah. It says here, 300,000-year-old wooden tools made by Denisovans discovered in China. The reason they make the connection with Denisovans is because only Denisovan hominid fossils were found in China during this time period. So they're concluding that it's the Denisovans that are using these.
Mm-hmm.
A remarkable collection of wooden tools dated to 300,000 years ago has been discovered at an archaeological site in southwest China, specially designed to harvest vegetation. The assemblage reveals how prehistoric hominids in the subtropical environment relied heavily on plants for their diet, while also highlighting the surprising technological skill of East Asian humans at the time when the region was supposedly inhabited by primitive communities. It says around 300,000 years ago in Europe, you had the Middle Paleolithic, when stone tool technology advanced rapidly. But in East Asia, there's very little change in stone artifacts until the arrival of modern humans 40 to 45,000 years ago. And the reason for that, I don't think it necessarily has to do with if you're smart or if you're not smart. I think it has to do with the necessity of the tool you're using and what you need the tool for.
Yeah, I was laughing earlier because they're always surprised at the technological advancement of such and such primitive group of hominids. And it's like, when are we going to stop being surprised? Because clearly these people are not lacking intelligence.
Right. And if the people living in this area were using wooden tools for hunting and for digging, they had no need for stone tools. Maybe they were exclusively killing small animals and then they just need a little wooden spear.
Right. Which is going to be a lot easier.
The hunting might have been easy here, whereas in Europe, it was more difficult.
Sure. And creating a wooden tool, you could certainly argue would be easier and take less effort than creating a stone tool. So if you don't really need a stone tool, why bother? You're wasting your energy, which is very smart.
The development of the stone tool technology in 40 and 45,000 years ago was because it was the peak of the ice age, and most of the small things they might not exist, the easy stuff to kill. And then we had to be like, well, we got to kill these giant megafauna, so we need to come up with a plan. And they developed all this spear technology to take out larger animals. And
yeah,
so
I don't think
in East Asia, it's subtropical. They've got plenty of small things to hunt.
right.
There's no ice caps down there, so they're just using their spears and their hand diggers.
Well, and as mentioned here, it's quite possible that these people were relying heavily on plants for sustenance, so that even speaks more to the applicability of wooden tools.
Yeah, here is some of the excavation. Here's that small hand digger. Here's the larger ones on the outset.
Was this discovered in 2018? I was guessing that was the case simply because of the identifying numbers on the artifacts. I'll start with the two in the picture start with 2018. So I was thinking.
Yeah, I only have the abstract, so
Okay.
it doesn't mention a date.
Yeah.
But the paper is, I can't find a date on the paper.
That's weird.
Oh, July 3rd of this year. Yeah, so it is very recent.
Okay, right.
Which doesn't mean they could have found these back then, and it took that long to do the study and write the paper.
That's quite possible. Yeah.
Using graduate students, it may take that long.
Yeah. This brings up. Go ahead. This brings up another, I think, an important point as well, right? I mean, obviously, wooden tools are not going to last as long as stone tools, which we can discuss why these survived, and we've seen this with other wooden artifacts before. But it creates, I think it helps create a misleading situation where we associate advancement with stone tools, perhaps only because those are the things that survive. Like we assume that the people not using stone tools were not advanced because we don't see their tools. So they must not have had any. But that's not necessarily the case. You could easily have wood tools that are perfectly applicable to your situation and appropriate. We just haven't seen them because they're going to disintegrate.
Yeah, the majority. Well, let's read the abstract here. It kind of gives you insight into what's going on. Wooden tools from the early Paleolithic period are extremely rare, with only 2 previous known discoveries, one in Europe and one in Africa. In both cases, the tools were hunting implements, spears and spear tips. So what we can glean from this is it's not that wood tools are rare, it's that the preservation of wood tools make them rare.
Right.
In fact, there's probably the majority of all tools we've used in the last 500,000 years have been wood.
Yeah.
Starting with the club. You want to protect yourself, you pick up a stick and you bang the thing coming at you in the head.
Right, because it's available to you and it's right there. But statistically also, the fact that we even found any wood tools to me indicates that there were many of them.
Yes, there's got to be many, many. And accidentally, a few were left in these anoxic bogs or anoxic areas where they didn't disintegrate or oxidize.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. All right. Anything else you want to talk about that?
Well, I just wanted to, I can't remember exactly, but we talked on another show a couple of years ago about that discovery that was made in, I think it was Tanzania, where they found the remnants of an actual wooden structure from
400 plus 1,000 years ago.
I can't remember. I want to say it was like 250,000 years ago, but
no, it was over 400,000.
I mean, that's absolutely crazy. And it was the same situation where the material is only available for us to see because it was preserved in an anoxic, moist environment. But fascinating stuff. And yet again, reminding us that hominids have had strong capabilities for a very long time and far longer than the official narrative would suggest.
Yeah. And the object discovered, the oldest wooden structure known, was discovered on the border of Zambia and Tanzania.
What did I say? I said Zimbabwe, I think.
I don't remember.
I don't know what I said.
So on the border of Zambia and Tanzania, this wood predates the rise of modern humans. The simple structure made by shaping 2 logs that are notched with sharp stone tools may have formed part of a walkway or platform for human ancestors who lived along the Kalambo River 500,000 years ago.
Well, it's interesting too that they mentioned stone tools being used to create this.
Yeah, because they could tell from the wood and the way it was cut.
Right. Right.
There are giant hand axes that are very old that date back here, and they're huge. They look like an arrowhead, but they're a foot, 16 inches long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so scientists at the University of Aberystwyth dated the structure to at least 476,000 years old.
That's amazing.
So there you have it.
Yeah. It's probably worth noting too that there's probably some amount of stone tools that are easily overlooked. Like you and I even have just found much more recent tools that you can ultimately tell are a tool because let's say they'll be sharpened on one edge and then they have this extremely ergonomic shape that really fits in your hand, which suggesting that it's some kind of scraper that you would use with your hand or some such. But there's probably a fair number of stone tools that have been overlooked.
Yeah, because all you need is a sharp edge to do something. You just pick up whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So there is that.
Yeah.
All right.
Fascinating.
Okay. New discovery in Iran reveals an ancient civilization that may have predated Mesopotamians by thousands of years. What were your thoughts on the article?
Well, there's one thing that kept bothering me. I thought it was kind of funny is that they keep saying that this civilization thrived about 5,000 years ago. However, in the same breath, there are inscriptions that are recognized as a form of writing here that we have, we're not previously aware of. And they say that this writing appears to date from the 4th millennium BC, which is at least 6,000 years ago. So if there's a form of writing that dates to that period, that would suggest that this culture was around far longer than just thriving at 5,000 years ago.
Right. Here are the tablets in question.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that they associate this with the Giroth culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's also known as the intercultural style or the Halerud style, which is an early Bronze Age 3rd millennium BC archaeological culture located in the present-day Sistan and Baluchistan and Kerman provinces of Iran. So they know about this group. So it's weird that they're saying they didn't know about them.
Yeah, and that they seem to be reluctant to say that it's older than a certain date. Like there seems to, that's what I feel from this. There's a reluctance to say that this is significantly older, let's say, than the Sumerian culture.
Well, the Wikipedia says this is 6,000 years ago.
Yeah. That's the acknowledgement just about this writing.
Yeah.
So I'm being kind of conservative, right? I'm saying, okay, 4th millennium BC, let's say 3,500 BC to today, So I think this culture was probably around for longer. And once again, we're surprised about the use of writing. I don't think we should be surprised. Clearly, we've been utilizing writing for a long time. Maybe not 40,000 years, but at least 6,000, probably more. Because this doesn't just appear overnight. Somebody doesn't just invent it one day.
No, it had to come from long, long before.
Right. And I think it's interesting too because the figures are all very geometric, basic shapes, which kind of makes some sense to me. If you're developing a writing system, it kind of makes sense to me that this is sort of what you would start with. I was kind of struck a little bit on the tablet on the lower left, the circles with the dot in the center, and maybe I only actually see one of them, only because that's like our astrological symbol for the sun. But,
Yeah.
these are very simple shapes, which could be easily understood by anyone. So that's another feature that I find interesting, is because it's so geometric. Um, a translation for a neighboring culture probably wouldn't be that difficult, because your brain already recognizes these shapes. Do you know what I mean?
Who does?
Anyone's brain, right,
Yeah.
is going to easily recognize a circle, a triangle, a square. It's not like a letter that you have to get familiar with for it to really stick in your brain.
So what they say here in the article is what has drawn new global attention is not the artistic flourishes, but the inscribed artifacts. Archaeologists have recovered both stone and clay tablets, which you're looking at there, bearing geometric signs, some of which may represent a form of Proto-Elamite writing. These markings appear to date to the 4th millennium BC, which is earlier than the earliest cuneiform tablet from Uruk, which is traditionally considered the cradle of writing. So just like everything we've seen over the last 10 years, everything just keeps getting older. And like you said, in this case, they're reluctant to make it old when this looks like that type of writing, which is actually 7,000 years old, which means it had to predate that.
Right.
And we know in the Levant, 9,000 years ago, there were cities in Urfa. They clearly were developing language there because that's post Göbekli Tepe, where the altars and the temples at Göbekli Tepe clearly show advanced communication. It's not just, ooga booga.
Right. Well, and then, add to this again, because it reminds me of Göbekli Tepe a little bit, but the artifacts, the other artifacts that are shown in these articles. I don't know if you looked at the article from Archeo News. The artifacts and the artistry on them is absolutely stunning. These chlorite bowls and such. Yeah. I mean, they're gorgeous. Inlaid with shells. I just find the style really beautiful. And of course,
remember, this is before, the 10 years ago, there would be archaeology classes to say that this is before farming.
I know. I know. I kept thinking about that too. I mean,
before we farmed, we did this.
Right. It's like, what?
Yeah, we made this before we had a language.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Okay, like in essence, the definition of agriculture is, growing plants in one place. It's cultivated, domesticated plants, right? You're not just wild harvesting or taking advantage of what's near you. And when you create art like this, and when you do agriculture, it says you're settled, you're not wandering.
Look at this piece.
I know. It's so stunning.
The world.
And I would
look at this. This is a praying mantis.
Oh, I didn't even see it that way, but yeah, I could see that now.
Two-headed praying mantis, a bird down here, a snake.
Yeah.
This is insane.
It's so beautiful, and I would love to know what it means. Does it represent something astrological? Is it like a pillar at Göbekli Tepe? Who knows? But it's really stunning.
That vase dates to 5,000 years ago.
Yeah. Again, also, this is not something that just crops up overnight, right? This takes time and development, and cultural development.
Yeah, because this is a solid piece of stone they've carved into this chalice. Holy macaroni.
Yeah, really gorgeous. That vase, I would love to own something like that. It's gorgeous.
I wonder what the value of it is. It's probably placed in the millions. I mean, who knows how much is this insured for? Is it on display, or is it just in a back room somewhere?
Right.
Yeah.
Look at that bird on the bottom. It's powerful.
I'm creeped out by the double-headed bird-like praying mantis dude.
With the monkey tail?
With the monkey tail.
You see the two legs, and then there's like a tail coming out the back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Looks like a monkey tail to me.
Interesting.
Mhm.
All right.
I mean, and I also, I think it's pretty clear too that there's some mythology involved with this because a lot of the creatures are like chimeras of some kind or half human, half creature. So, and then here we go with a handbag.
And the handbag from a single piece of stone.
Hmm. With a mouse and two lions. That's what it looks like to me.
2 lions eating a bull.
Isn't that a mouse? That looks like a mouse to me. A giant
With
mouse.
horns?
No, that's like an ear.
Those are 2 horns.
No, it's funny how we all look
It's
at
a
things
water buffalo,
completely different.
probably.
Huh. That would make more sense, I suppose. So they're saying that this is some kind of a weight, like a measuring weight, which is possible.
Absolutely.
And that's actually, I think, something worthwhile keeping in mind for all of the other handbag images that we run across in other cultures, since we've been trying to figure out really what those are.
Well, in the Assyrian bas relief, there are water pails, which are well documented in the literature.
Which could also be a kind of weight.
Yeah. You fill the pail with a certain amount of water.
Right.
And that gives you your weights and measures.
Right.
Pretty fantastic.
Well, and that's kind of an interesting to think about too, right? Because let's say like in Egyptian culture where you also see these handbags, the idea of it being a weight might have some bearing in the sense that, you've got an Egyptian culture that supposedly is kind of judging the value of a human being before they go to the afterlife, stuff like that. So
yeah,
you could
this one they call Master of the Animals.
Mm.
And again, another handbag looking thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
What appears to be scorpions on the outside.
Uh-huh.
2 jaguars.
They also kind of look like boa constrictors, don't they?
What?
Not boa constrictors. What's the snake that people charm?
Cobra?
I guess, yeah. They kind of look a little bit like cobras, don't you think? The scorpions? Maybe I just thought of it because you said Master of the Animals.
Yeah. But there's inlays here. Like, look, we're down by his. And again, he's got goat legs.
Yeah, he's like a centaur.
Yep. Very interesting. I got some more. I mean, they were obsessed with these handbags. Let's take a look at this. Boom.
Mm.
And then the scorpions up top 2. And then these look like potentially scorpion people.
I was thinking they looked like fish people.
And they're horned.
Yeah. Oh, I think they mentioned that in the text that they think these are like scorpion people.
And the one on the right looks like a witch with that nose. All right, let's see if I can pull up a few more of these if they're interesting. That's the chlorite vase. We saw that. Man, these chlorite vases.
Oh my.
Big eyeballs.
Wow. Isn't it amazing how long we've been reproducing images of bulls? Bulls have been very important to human beings for a very long time.
Well, it's the original god, Baal.
Right. I thought Baal was a goat. Guess we could look it up.
So here we've got intertwined snakes in a handbag.
Oh, you're correct. Baal is a bull.
Take a look at this box. This could be the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, right? Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. I love this style.
And then we've got these weird artifacts.
What are those?
They look like metal snakes.
Are they made out of metal?
They can't be. So they have to be made of stone. Let me see what they say. Oh, they're bronze figurines from Giraffe
Oh.
Museum. So this is in the Bronze Age. So they are
Yeah,
making these out of bronze.
yeah. Oh, they're beautiful.
Wow. So we were far more advanced as far as civilization is concerned 6,000 and 7,000 years ago than any textbooks in first 12 years of school lead on to believe. Like that. And not only were we extremely advanced, we have no idea of how advanced they were or what they knew.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, perhaps, well, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons, and this is probably only a small part of it. But I was thinking about when you look at medieval and Renaissance art from Europe, there's always this conversation about the skill of the artists increasing over time. Because when you look at, especially like early medieval paintings, the skill of the artists was not very good. Like if you look at paintings of children, they usually just look like mini adults, like people didn't understand how to draw the face of a child. And over time that kind of improved. And so I think it helps inform or confirm this idea that we progress over time. And then because the painting skill in the early medieval period is not very good, we assume that everybody before them was, wildly even far more unskilled. But this isn't true. It's just in that time frame, Europeans were not very skilled in that department, whereas other cultures clearly were. The artistry of the vases from this Giraffe culture they're fabulous. Does that mean that they necessarily would have been good at painting realism? Not necessarily, but there's clearly skill there.
Yeah, they're unmatched at carving single pieces of stone into objects.
Right.
With bas relief art on it and inlays.
Yeah.
Which would rival any stone craftsman today.
Yeah. I wonder why there's.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It might not be able to be replicated today by maybe just a few people on Earth.
Right.
Right.
I'm wondering why there's so many of these snakes, right? So if these are the ones we know about, or some of the ones we know about, it sort of suggests to me that there were a lot of these around. So
yeah, everyone probably had a
about.
snake on their mantle or something made of bronze.
Right. Right.
For one reason or another that we have no idea why.
Yeah. They're cool.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about this ancient culture?
Mm-mm.
Okay, let's get on with the cool stuff. We're talking about this gigantic jet that was just photographed a few days ago from the International Space Station. Texas is down there. You can see New Orleans is to the right, that bright light.
Oh, okay. The bright light? I thought that was... What are we looking at the same picture? I thought I was looking at Aurora.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, there we go.
So this over here is New Orleans, the bright city glowing.
Yeah.
This is some city in Texas, probably.
You've frozen up on me.
Transient Luminous event. So what else? What is this? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You just froze up on me for a minute, so I missed some of what you said.
This is a transient luminous event. And what is it? Well, it is a discharge that is occurring with the ionosphere, and they happen above gigantic thunderstorm supercells. In the thunderstorm below, there is tons of lightning occurring. And so it's generating the lightning being generated below in the storm. This is the, let's say, extension cord to the ionosphere where the electricity is transferred. And it's typically not visible, but sometimes the plasma is in glow mode. And if you got a camera there, you get what is called a transient luminous event. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this obviously was a great opportunity to be able to capture this from above the clouds. And, this article talks about how we typically don't see these because they're above the clouds, but it does seem like sprites are being observed transient luminous events are being observed more often. I don't know if that's really true. If they've just gained attention recently. So my question is are they appearing more often? Are they becoming more visible from the ground for some reason? I mean, I don't know the answer to that.
Right. I think that, yes, they are. This is a factor of what's happened over the last decade with our waning magnetosphere. What we're experiencing during geomagnetic storms is more and different, unique types of aurora, like Steve and red aurora. And so what's
And also
happening
saying
is
aurora at lower latitudes as well.
yeah, I think that our atmosphere is more easily induced into plasma glow mode.
Yeah.
For all forms of phenomenon, it's across the spectrum because this electricity is contained within our atmosphere of Earth, all the way up to the ionosphere. Here's the picture of where the plasma can glow. From the troposphere through the stratosphere, through the mesosphere, all the way to the ionosphere. And many of these things are connected, like the thunderstorms below, the positive cloud to ground lightning flashes are being fed through invisible Birkeland currents that connect to the ionosphere. But sometimes something happens in them, and then we get tendrils, sprites, and elves, which show up. This is just the glow mode. Similar to the different types of aurora we have, similar things are happening right here. Yeah. But these plasma glow mode events are controlled by thunderstorms, not by geomagnetic storms, whereas aurora is controlled by geomagnetic storms. But it simply is adding mountains of evidence to the electric universe hypothesis.
Oh, absolutely. It's just inescapable now.
Like, it's electric, folks.
It's all electric.
And it's all connected all the way down to our biofield. And you, in fact, are electric.
True.
So here's a shot. Go ahead. What are you saying?
Well, I was just thinking it just makes it a bit interesting that, let's say, I've noticed in conversation with people that people have different reactions to different electromagnetic dynamics on Earth, right? Like, so let's say we're in geomagnetic storm. Some people feel good at a certain level of KP, and some people feel terrible at a certain level. And it changes from person to person, which to me indicates that not only are we all electric, but we all sort of have our own unique electromagnetic signatures like anything else.
Oh, we lost the share. I guess I did get disconnected.
Oh, dear.
How long has it not been sharing?
A minute, less than a minute.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
Look at that shot.
Wow.
Where you can clearly see the Birkeland current is connected to the center of the supercell.
Yeah.
Like the extension cord. That is fascinating. And this is identical to the one just captured above this supercell.
Yeah, how was the previous one captured?
Someone standing on Hawaii.
Oh, I see. Okay.
This is a guy on top of Mauna Loa or somewhere where there's an observatory.
Wow.
And this wasn't the one that was captured by NASA. This is several years old.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's really fantastic.
You can even see the rotation in the lower part of the purple part of the Birkeland current.
Absolutely.
Take that, standard model of cosmology.
That was the biggest geek comment ever.
It's what?
That was a really big geek comment.
Yeah.
Take that, standard cosmology. I think it's interesting too how at the top of this, what's visible to us anyway, there's kind of a split as well, as if you have like two currents that are combining.
Yeah. So let's see what they say about these transient luminous events. Upper atmospheric lightning, it's also called. And guys, when this type of stuff is happening, guess what also happens?
I don't know
the Schumann resonance spikes.
Oh.
A lot of people think the Schumann resonance has to do with aliens or human consciousness or something. The definition of Schumann resonance is a measure of ionospheric lightning. That's it. So when NASA took this picture, I guarantee if you got the time and date and you pulled up the Schumann resonance, it would be on fire because it's measuring ionospheric lightning or upper atmospheric lightning. So these terms are used by researchers to refer to a family of short-lived electrical breakdown phenomenon. And they're even admitting it's electric, right?
Of course. But they still won't say it's an electric universe.
That occur well above the altitude of normal lightning and storm clouds. Upper atmospheric lightning is believed to be electrically induced form of luminous plasma. How about it is?
Right.
What else would it be?
Right. Yeah, I mean, plasma doesn't exist without electricity.
Yeah, and they're wondering why the phenomenon above the clouds, the lightning above the clouds looks different than the lightning below the clouds, which is kind of like so basic. Below the clouds, you're in the lower atmosphere with high pressures and different temperatures. Above the clouds, there's almost no atmosphere, and it gets thinner to nothing. Up where the sprites are occurring, there's no air up there, and it's minus 50 degrees.
Well, also the atmospheric chemistry from layer to layer is going to be different, which is going to affect what these things look like.
Which is exactly shown here. Look at this. Right. At each layer, everything is similar. So from the megasphere above, you get the plasma glow mode in this orange in the form of sprites. When you come down in the mesosphere, when you add more elements and oxygen, you start getting purples and magentas, and then you can get the deep blues once you're in the stratosphere. Then below that, everything is white, like lightning.
Right.
So you can see the stripes of colors. You got white, blue, magenta, orange, green.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right.
You all just passed the class. And you all get an A. So our universe is electric, which means our planet is in an electric universe, which means if storms are electrical and we've got lightning, the lightning has to be coming from the electric universe. So somehow the universe is powering all of these stars and planets.
Right.
And it's interesting to be alive when we're just noticing these phenomenon. Like we're some of the first few thousands of people discussing what's actually happening here on Earth as far as electric universe. There's not a lot of people talking about this.
Correct.
But as above, so below.
Right. It's funny how common it is to, let's say, make an observation about these TLEs, right? And then not really have the curiosity to sort of take it a step further and say, well, what does that mean for the nature of the universe? Like, I can't even understand why your brain wouldn't go there, but I think it's odd.
Well, and if you were Nikola Tesla and you knew about this, you'd be like, what if we set up a bunch of battery banks on Earth, and when these occur, we plug them in?
Right.
Then everything gets charged in an instant.
Right.
The amount of energy in this transient luminous event is probably equivalent to all the electricity used in a month on Earth.
Right.
And so it's would be very valuable to study these and understand how to harness the power of these events.
Yes. Instead, we have these, very low efficiency solar panels, etc.
And we're building billion-dollar factories that suck carbon dioxide out of the air.
Right.
It's an insane asylum.
I just learned this morning, and I don't know the details, so forgive me, but about essentially a solar farm that was contracted, I think, in California for PG&E for like 15 years ago, and it's just a complete failure because they didn't even account for equipment failures, and there were all kinds of other problems. They were using mirrors to like get bugs out of there, and then the mirrors were getting really hot and the birds were going after the insects and getting immediately scorched. So it was like an environmental disaster. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this is so dumb. Oh, such a
Sounds about right.
waste.
All right, moving on from Electric Universe, and we may be able to bring it up here. NASA scientists find ties between Earth's oxygen and its magnetic field. Here is the paper in Science Advances, which came out the 13th of June of this year. There is a strong link between Earth's oxygen level and the geomagnetic dipole revealed since the last 540 million years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just some background is early on in Earth's life. Let's go back 4 billion years, 4.5 billion years. There's no oxygen here. It had to slowly build. And then at some threshold, 3.5 billion, maybe we started producing oxygen because we've got stromatolites, which are these algal mats that are beginning to form on Earth in these hot pools of water, murky, God knows what's in the water. But in order to have this algae there, they've got to be photosynthesizing.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the beginning of life on Earth creating oxygen. Prior to that, nothing was creating oxygen on Earth.
Not even anything geochemical.
Not that we're aware of, no.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what it takes is billions of years of these stromatolitic mounds. And in fact, that's what happens for the next 2 billion years. Nothing but algae is on Earth creating oxygen, but it's also getting compressed, lithified, and storing oxygen now in rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes on for billions of years. So we're going to get billions of tons of oxygen stored in these rocks, as well as carbon and other stuff from the algae.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the beginning of what I think is what this paper is going to be talking about. So for 540 million years, the ebb and flow in the strength of Earth's magnetic field has correlated with fluctuations in atmospheric oxygen, according to a new release study by NASA. Never a straight answer. But here is, are we looking at the right page? Yeah. It's so confusing running all these things at once.
Yeah.
Here is the 500 million years in question. The blue line is the oxygen concentration on Earth. The red line is the magnetic field strength, the VGADM. You see it come up here 500 million years ago, drop down 375 million years ago to some of the lowest levels, and then rise up to the highest levels 300 million years ago. Drop back down to the lowest levels 250 million years ago, and then fluctuate. The reason it looks like it fluctuates more here, guess why that is? It's more recent and we have more data.
Right.
You know, the further back you go, it starts to get sketchier and sketchier. That's it.
Sure.
So obviously, the closer you get till now, you're going to get more wiggles.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's one of the reasons I think that it's important that they have these different sort of mathematical filters on this data, because as the filter goes more long-term, the correlation gets really tight. So in other words, the correlation is not, it's not instantaneous, but it's on a very long scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think this is some slow response to what's going on. Like outgassing of the oceans takes decades and decades to change anything as far as in our atmosphere.
Yeah.
The same thing's happening here. The magnetic field is causing the amount of oxygen to be what it is on the long-term scale. And what that is anyone's guess.
Right. I mean, in this paper, they're trying to, and actually, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down, because after you get past that 50 million year bandpass filter, I mean, you start to see how tight the correlation is when you look at it this way. But in this paper, they're certainly stuck on the idea that the magnetic field of Earth's controlled by its own internal dynamo.
Yeah.
It certainly does not consider the possibility that our magnetic field is in part regulated by something outside of us, which I think you have to consider here. But because of that, they're trying to link it to, they're trying to make a connection between oxygen, the magnetic field of Earth, and the plate tectonics, essentially. That somehow the plate tectonics change the dynamo in such a way that then changes the atmosphere, the amount of oxygen available on Earth. Which
and I would concur with that.
Right.
And did you remember what I said earlier?
No.
That it's the trapping of the oxygen in the rocks.
Oh, yeah.
For billions of years that allows this to be a function.
Right.
And in fact, if the magnetic field has something to do and control the growth of Earth, if expanding Earth is the driver of plate tectonics, you're going to get these huge pulses of increased oxygen, perhaps. Right. What this suggests maybe is that all the expansion is happening here up during the peak here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was thinking too, right? Because and this is kind of an assumption that we're making, but it's an informed assumption based on everything else that we've looked at. The idea that expansion is happening in pulses, that it's not a continuous process. And so that would sort of suggest that at times of expansion that we're increasing the amount of oxygen that's available.
Yeah, through oxidation processes. What's interesting is a lot of the rocks between 250 and 320 million years ago contain massive amounts of red beds.
What are red beds?
It's called the Great Oxidation Event.
What are red beds? Iron oxides or something?
Iron oxides forming all over Earth at this time.
Yeah.
So there's something geochemical going on, which can be seen in the entire stratigraphic record. All the red rocks you see out in Red Rocks are from this time.
Oh, that's
all the red rocks in the West date to this time.
I mean, the thing that I'm not understanding right now is, from everything we looked at, assuming expansion is correct and a phenomena, the expansion is happening on the seafloor, not in the continental crust. So is it that the expansion in the seafloor is allowing for more atmospheric oxygen, which is then impacting the geochemistry in the continental crust?
Yeah.
Is that the line of causation?
What's the causation?
I knew you didn't hear what I said.
I'm trying to look something up.
I know. From everything we've seen, it seems that expansion is only happening at the seafloor, right? So what this would imply is that the expansion at the seafloor is impacting the amount of atmospheric oxygen, which then later becomes part of the geochemistry of the continental crust. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, in geology, you can explain this in 3 different ways. Like, you can explain it from the existing environment. You can explain it from the depositional environment. You can explain it from the later preservation. It can happen in all 3 phases because of what the conditions.
Okay.
And there's no way to know because we weren't there.
Right. Well, that might also help explain, like, let's say when you look at this through a shorter time period filter, like a 10 million year bandpass filter, that it doesn't appear to line up as well. Perhaps that's why, because maybe there's several different processes involved in creating a situation where there's more oxygen in the geochemistry in the continental crust. Yeah. I don't even know if I'm making sense, but.
Well, and what's also interesting to look at this is if you go all the way to the right side of the graph, this is the explosion of complex life on Earth occurs kind of at the beginning of this graph. Right?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
Right when the oxygen rises. And where we are now is at the same spot in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which suggests that according to this graph, in 50 million years, there may be no life on Earth.
Right.
Except for algae.
Right.
which is the way it was on the other side.
Well, and that's interesting too, because, and I don't know if this is necessarily true across the board, but I can certainly think of lots of examples where the variety of life on Earth has, in some respects, decreased. I mean, hominids are just one example. There's only one type of hominid left.
Yeah, that major decrease has happened in the last just few million years.
Mm-hmm.
2 million years ago, there was probably like 20 plus different hominids running around here.
Yeah.
Peaking at like 40 maybe or more a million years ago.
Right.
And 40,000 years ago, there were just 2 left.
Right.
And then just us.
Right.
And because we're such short-lived animals with such small brains and tiny intellects where we think we know stuff, it's impossible to understand at these scales what may be occurring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this is something I've been arguing, what you just said, I've been arguing since college. Like, I was in a philosophy of biology class, and I was trying to make the point that our understanding of evolution is heavily limited by our own lifespans, because you simply cannot easily sort of step back and get a bird's eye view when your lifespan is only 80 years. You know, you can't see the whole picture. You just can't. Now, you can put a lot of data together, and that can help you get a bird's eye view, but still, you're very limited by that time frame. Nobody understood what the heck I was talking about, but
yeah, I think it would take 5 or 10,000 years studying a single species to determine if anything is actually changing in the genome.
Yeah.
And we've already discussed how the field of genetics and the field of phylogeny is so incoherent when it comes to taxonomy. Most of the stuff that are fossils that we've put into genus and species is probably extremely incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're basing all of the assumptions on morphology, which just means the shape. And so if aliens came here and looked at all the dogs on Earth, they would have them not as all the same animal.
Right. Well, that's kind of the problem, right? We started with morphology, right? We started with morphology. We looked for physical similarities, and then we started grouping organisms on that basis. Now, I will say the genetics, I think, has started to correct that on some level, but it's still complicated by the fact that we do see big jumps in genetic evolution that we can't explain very well. Anyway, I think you and I have some ideas about why that might be the case. Like, we've talked a lot about the, oh my gosh, I'm losing the word right now. The genetic material coming from outer space, panspermia concept. Which might help explain some of those jumps.
Yeah, but there's also problems in genetics in general. Like, the definition of a species is that you can only interbreed with that group. That's the definition of a species. Yet lions are definitely a different genus and species than tigers. Completely different, yet they can mate and make babies. So there's something intrinsically wrong with the way we think of genetics, phylogeny, taxonomy. There needs to be a new approach, because I think it's more free flow as far as evolution.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, I don't think species is as demarcated on either end as we think. There is some
because they suggest AIDS came from humans banging monkeys.
Right.
So it's happening.
Maybe AIDS came from a lab, but anyway, that's another conversation.
Or your pet goat. Who knows?
Right. Right.
All right, great show. Anything else you want to say for a final word?
No, I'm just really fascinated to see where this oxygen magnetic field strength connection goes, because I think this might be a huge clue in trying to understand how our Earth actually works. But I think it's really important that we get outside of the assumptions that this paper carries with it, that it's all, that the whole magnetic field is controlled by Earth's own dynamo. I think that there's a lot of problems with that hypothesis, and it really needs to be taken apart. And maybe there's some element of the dynamo that is a part of this, but the Earth doesn't exist in isolation. We exist as in a relationship with our sun, with the planets around us, and with the rest of the universe. And especially given that this is an electric universe, I don't think that we can not consider all of those variables in our own magnetic field. That seems ridiculous.
But the climate is controlled by cow farts.
Right. Because everything is, the earth is all unto itself.
It's all our fault. I can't believe they didn't blame
fault.
humans on this, the connection.
Yeah, right.
All right. It's exclusively on Rumble tonight, 8 p.m. every Saturday, with a replay on Wednesday over at that YouTube channel that likes to censor us. We don't even know if this will be monetized, but we know it will be on Rumble. So we thank you all for supporting us here. If you're watching tonight and you're not following on Rumble, hit the follow button. If you're sick of the commercials because you came late, you can get Rumble Premium and use our code STUDIO for 10% off, where you get all premium content creators on Rumble, not just us, everyone, for one price. Great show. We love you guys. Be safe.